thought it'd be great if everybody could turn around, greet their neighbor, meet somebody that you haven't met here tonight during the hour that preceded this. Because as much as this is about these guys, what's up? All right, let's settle down. Yeah, good job. As I was saying, how are you? Nice to meet you. Yeah, all right, good.
I really enjoyed the microbiome.
Oh, good, thank you. As I was saying, tonight is about connecting with RJ and with Alex and with Rivian, but it's also, and mostly about all of you, creating this community that exudes the ethos of what RJ and his team is here to build. So thank you for that. And let's just open it up. RJ, how did this happen? How did you create this company? Walk me through the backstory here.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it was amazing, when you ask the question, who here has pre-ordered a vehicle, and seeing all those hands. And it's deeply humbling and really moving to see so many people get so excited about what we and the team have put together. And what you see here today isn't the result of 10 people. This is the result of hundreds of people working many, many hours, making thousands and thousands of decisions, having thousands and thousands of arguments around features, debating things, rethinking things, making U-turns. It's the process of development. And for me, the process of building the company and getting to that point where what you see today, the result of all those decisions, the result of all those debates, was also the result of really pulling the right types of people together. And so we've got an incredible team. It's a passionate team. I'm really lucky to be working with a group of people that's as excited about the product and about what we're doing as I am. And it just self-propels. That type of energy helps us get through the really hard parts of the climb, the quote-unquote boulder problems. But it really is, and it's a result of the work of many, many people.
Alex, who here doesn't know who Alex Honnold is? Anybody brave enough to raise their hand? Who here saw Free Solo? Excellent. Yeah. Alex, for the few people that may not know who you are, maybe walk us through a little bit of who you are, what you do.
I suppose most of you guys know from seeing the film, but I'm a professional rock climber, and I've been climbing I've pretty much devoted all my time to climbing for the last 25 years almost, and really that's about it. I suppose I'm most well known for is the mic good? Do we like this?
Echoing a little.
It doesn't. Yeah, okay. They're saying louder. Other people are saying quieter. We'll see, but they're in charge, so. So I suppose I'm most well known for free soloing, for climbing without a rope. But I've been doing all kinds of climbing for my whole life. I climb with partners. I climb on expeditions. I travel quite a bit. And as we'll talk about later, I also started the Honnold Foundation 5 or 6 years ago, supporting solar projects around the world. And that was originally tied in with some of the expeditions that I've been on, and now has broadened to take on much more complicated projects and to try more meaningful work. But basically, if you watch the film, it's a great documentary, but it's a 90-minute distillation of 2 years of effort toward one climbing project. It doesn't perfectly encapsulate, 25 years of climbing and the other interests that I have, and what I'm trying to do with the foundation and things like that. It's just so focused on El Cap. But anyway.
So RJ, the more I learn about Rivian, the more I realize that there's a lot more going on here than just creating an awesome car. So explain the motivation behind this and really the goal that you're aiming for, the values that you're trying to instill in not just your corporate culture, but to the world at large.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. To start something like this and to think about building a company that I think one of the most important things about building a company like this is that it ultimately is something customers, the community, the world needs. And the challenge with that question is building something that the world needs is thinking about it through different time horizons. So thinking about what the world needs in 2020 and then designing the technology, designing the platform, designing the technology and product roadmap to also fit into a world of 2035 and 2040. So a lot of what we've put together is part of a broader set of activities to drive not only electrification, but to move us meaningfully towards a more sustainable future. So what we're going to talk about today with Alex is some of the steps in that process where we can leverage our battery systems to support grid applications, to support energy storage applications. But very importantly, our platform, our technology can fit and work in products well beyond our own. So some of that's now come out into the public domain with some of the partnerships we've announced in the last few months. Of course, with the Ford relationship we announced, I guess, 2-3 months ago. But really for us, what drives us is how can we have impact in helping the world transition to more sustainable ways of living and do it in a way that is really desirable, that pulls people in, that makes people want to be part of that movement.
I'm sure many times along the path, somebody has said to you, the idea of building an independent car company is insane. This is an impossible task that you've taken on. And I'm sure, Alex, many times throughout your life, somebody said to you, you're going to climb El Cap without ropes? Like, that's impossible, right?
That's why you don't talk to people about it.
Right.
That's why you just
Make movies
set out working. Well, I mean, honestly, Rivian kind of taking the same path to some extent, right?
Well, that's what's interesting. Like, although you guys are different and do different things, you both have taken on these monumental, sort of goals into your life and, have accomplished them or continuing to accomplish them. So I'm interested in how you approach these impossible goals. Like, they're so lofty, they're so inaccessible for most people.
Yeah.
Like, what is the mindset that you bring into your vision and your work, or when you're approaching a particular wall?
Well, Alex and I, when we first met, we really connected because in many ways, while we're doing different things, we have that very similar drive to do something that is very hard and requires a lot of persistence. It's not something that you do in a day or do in a week or do in a year. It takes years of time, lots of dedication. In fact, when my wife and I watched Alex's movie, she looks at me and says, boy, like, I'm relating so much to this movie because I can see him going through the same struggles that you've gone through. But, I think with that said, it's really important when you identify the goal, the target, to recognize that it's not going to happen in a single step. It takes lots of time, lots of resources, lots of decisions, as I said. And one of the reasons we waited so long to launch and to show our product, we didn't show our product until LA, which was end of last year, was because we wanted to make sure we had all the pieces together. Alex joked when he said, don't ask people what they think, but in a very similar way, if we were to show the product 2-3 years ago, it would have been similar, but it wouldn't have been finished. It wouldn't have had all those questions answered. So we wanted to answer as many of those questions internally first, so that when we presented it, whether there's a supply chain, how are we going to manufacture it? Do we have the capital? What's it going to look like? Is the technology solid? Have we tested in cold weather? Have we tested in hot weather? We wanted to have all those questions answered, so what we're presenting is something that ultimately is what you'll receive.
Alex, similarly, part of what RJ is doing, this task that he's taken on, started as a solo mission, right? Just you had this idea, this audacious idea. Now it's about teamwork and team building and kind of, sort of instilling inspiration into these people that work with you. What you do, Alex, is very much a solo pursuit, but now by virtue of the foundation, you're in a similar position where you have to empower others.
What I'm doing isn't necessarily obviously free solo, when you watch the film, it seems like it's totally solo, but the reality is that, I worked with the film crew the whole time. I, maintained a relation with my girlfriend through the whole thing. There are a lot of people, and and I climbed with can you hear when you use the mic? Or, because I think they're adjusting the volume. Is the mic better? Okay. That guy gets a gold medal. Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, I guess we'll just pass the mic. Or maybe they'll bring more. But so, Well, you're saying that yeah, free solo climbing isn't quite as solo as it looks, because I'm still relying on the whole climbing community, my friends, my partners, the people that I train with, the people who I practice with. I mean, each time I was rappelling down the wall to practice, there was often one of the film guys with me. But the reason I was even making the film was because I knew all the people that I would be working with, and I knew that I wanted to spend time with them working on the wall together. Basically them filming it was kind of a good sort of covert way for me to get their time to help me on my project. Because I kind of knew that there's a lot of physical labor involved with hiking to the top of the mountain and rappelling down with ropes over and over, and so I kind of wanted to be able to split that labor between all my different friends, and the film was a great way to do that. And so, even though it's free soloing and it seems like a singular pursuit, I mean, it's always built upon a whole community, and I think my foundation really stems from that as well. I mean, because you go on expeditions to different parts of the world and you see other communities living in different ways, and you realize that, or at least I realized that to the best of my abilities, I should try to do something positive. I felt a certain obligation to do something useful for the world. But
This is a very interesting alliance between the two of you guys and your respective missions. So how did this come together? How did you guys first meet up?
That's a good question. I guess it was through some of our team had connected with some of Alex's team, and then, like anything else, Alex and I met, and we got on really well, and we said, let's work together. Let's find a way to do some things together. And of course, as Alex said, he's really passionate about really leaving a positive impact on the world, and his foundation's spending a lot of time thinking about how do we do that vis-a-vis solar and providing electric supply to people that don't have it. That fits beautifully with some of the things we're working on as well.
yeah, and I would just add that the Rivian vehicles are exactly what I've been wanting to use for years. I mean, I've been wanting to electrify my transportation for probably 5 or 6 years. I was sort of fantasizing about electric vans and imagining, but it just wasn't quite there. And then maybe a biodiesel van, but that's not really that sweet either. And basically I've sort of looked into it and investigated. But for somebody who's lived out of a car full time for I guess almost 15 years, I want a car that works like this. And now I actually own a home, and so now I'm mostly commuting to certain climbing areas around my house. And I basically needed, of course I have solar on the house, and I want to be driving on electricity, and I was like, this is exactly what I need to go out. Basically, because all the climbing areas around Las Vegas where I live, they all kind of end with kind of gnarly four-wheel drive dirt roads. So you do a lot of highway commuting, and then at the very end, there's kind of extreme driving to get to the actual cliff. And so, most other electric vehicle options don't really cut it to get to the actual wall. And so when I learned about the Rivian trucks, I was like, this is going to be incredible. I'm going to go so fast. So, yeah, so obviously there's the alignment in values and and what we hope to do in the world. But I mean, also at a certain point, you just want to drive the truck really fast.
Put another way, I guess I just sold him a car. It's as simple as that.
Relationships between athletes or people that are endorsing products tend to be relatively transactional. But in this case, this is like a true alliance. Like, this is a very immersive relationship, and all of you guys are going to learn more about that over the course of the next hour. But talk a little bit about the relationship beyond just awesome car that fits your lifestyle, and how you guys can kind of work together for this shared vision, the shared values that you guys have.
Well, I guess just to kick off, what we're going to talk about today is applying our batteries from our vehicles, our test vehicles, into what we call a second life application. And a big part of designing the company and designing the vehicles is thinking about the full life cycle. So thinking about not just the impact of the vehicle, but then what's the impact of making the vehicle and what happens to the vehicle at its end of life. And at the end of vehicle life, the batteries still have 75, 80% of their usable capacity for storage. So it's an amazing opportunity to harvest those. And we have several hundred vehicles that we're building over the next year and a half that we won't be able to sell. Development vehicles, prototype vehicles, validation vehicles, all of which will ultimately, unfortunately, need to be scrapped. But we're harvesting those batteries from those vehicles into the first real-life prove-out of a second life application, where they'll go in and actually act as a storage device within communities that really need them. And you can sort of see how this scales over time. This is a core part of how we've designed our battery systems, that it not only works just in the vehicle, but it seamlessly transitions into a storage application. And that's, the fact that it's seamless is really important, because it it lowers the barrier for the batteries to find the second life, to get into some sort of a storage application.
I just want to ask, so is that actually built into the design of the vehicles, that second life application, that's fully from the beginning you designed it that way?
Yeah, so the vehicles are designed, so essentially the battery comes out of the vehicle, we flip a digital switch, and the batteries can then go from storing electrons that are propelling a vehicle to storing electrons that could be powering a house or a business. And the pack itself is designed to stack very easily into an enclosure, into essentially a shipping container. And then in smaller applications, you can actually take the top off the pack, and inside the pack, what we call our modules, these are sized to perfectly fit into a rack. So you can dissect modules as well and use them for more discretized or smaller energy storage applications. So it's absolutely a core part of the design.
What is the current procedure now with respect to batteries? Like when an EV car goes to the graveyard, what happens to that battery typically?
So today we're still really early days. So most batteries haven't been designed, as Alex asked, they haven't been designed to easily transition into a storage application. So unfortunately, that means a lot of the batteries aren't used. So they essentially get recycled back to raw materials. It's a waste of a lot of value. So the way we design the cooling systems, the battery management systems, the physical mounting systems, the power offtake supply, that's all been set up to very easily go into these storage applications.
RJ, what is the genesis of your interest in sustainability? Like, where did this begin? Like, why is this important to you?
That's a deep question. It's in many ways it's the central motivation for the business. So I grew up as an absolute car enthusiast. Loved working on cars, restoring cars. And I started to develop this really deep tension in myself where the things that I really loved were simultaneously the things that were making the planet worse, whether it's geopolitical or air quality or climate change. And I mean, it really bothered me because this thing that I just spent a lot of time on and just adored was also this thing that made the world worse. So along the way, decided I wanted to do something to fix it. Ultimately pursued a PhD in automotive development and decided really the most effective way to do that, the way I thought I'd have the most impact was to start a company. And in starting Rivian, the goal was to create products that are exciting and built with passion and deliver real performance, but at the same time are deeply sustainable. And then in doing that, we laid out a strategy, as I discussed, that the platform, the technology can be applied into very different things, into different companies' brands, into different types of products, into storage solutions. And the decisions we make as a company absolutely are made from the vantage point of how do we have the most impact. So, for example, sitting here with friends today, I can say this: the deal we did with Ford was part of that. How can we help provide a platform that will speed up their electrification efforts in a certain segment? And that was motivated by the desire to get more sustainable electric vehicles on the road more quickly.
Alex, was there a specific inflection point for you where these things became important to you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a specific inflection point, but obviously being a professional climber, I've spent the bulk of my time outdoors in honestly the most beautiful place on earth. I spend months every year in Yosemite, spend months traveling, to say South America and to Patagonia. Like basically, I spend all my time in these beautiful places, and I think that I wind up caring more about the outdoors. Having these powerful experiences in nature, you wind up caring a little bit more about preserving, protecting, and hoping that the next generation can have similar experiences. I mean, and then obviously the cultural side of it, sort of the more personal side of it, on some of these expeditions, say one specific trip to the northeastern corner of Chad. It's like the middle of nowhere, right on the edge of the Sahara Desert, basically. It's called the Anneti Desert. But it was my first expedition to Africa, actually, and just it was my first real exposure to the billion people on Earth that don't have access to power. And growing up in suburban California, it's pretty easy just to take electricity for granted. And for me personally, that was the first time that I've been fully off-grid in a way. I mean, off-grid doesn't even do it justice, because we drove with no roads, just driving by GPS across empty desert for 3 days into the middle of nowhere. And so you get to literally the middle of, it's 3 days of just sand. And then there are people living out there herding goats and sort of eking out an existence in the desert. And I was like, this is an incredibly different existence than I've had growing up in Sacramento. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's, yeah, slightly understated, but I was like, it's just, it's very eye-opening to me. And so, that combined with probably a half dozen other experiences, similar in nature on different trips, really contributed to starting the foundation. But, I don't know, but, so part of it is wanting to, caring about the natural place that I'm in. Part of it's caring about the people that you see. I mean, it's all sort of comes together, and then maybe at the very base of it all is just a general inherent sense of fairness or a certain, I don't know, a feeling that, having been given quite a bit in life or just having a relatively easy go of it, I have a certain obligation to try to do something useful. Because at the same time that I was starting to care more, I was reading a ton of environmental nonfiction, reading about climate change, reading about the history of oil and transportation and, all kinds of different things, reading a lot of nonfiction. But as I was learning more about it, I was also, having these encounters, and I was like, I just feel a certain obligation to do something. It's...
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that we can all do individually to reduce our carbon footprint and live a bit more gentle, on the planet. But it's a very different thing to try to solve these problems at scale, which is what your mission is.
So that, honestly, yeah, sorry I'm cutting in. But so that's a big part of why I started the foundation, though, because you're right that there are a lot of individual things you can do. And so the same year that I started the Honnold Foundation, I also went vegetarian because it's kind of a simple way to reduce your impact. I was already living in a car. I already don't consume very much. I don't own very much. I was like, there's not a whole lot that I personally can do, besides changing my diet and a couple other sort of consumer type things. So I was like, beyond that, I need to start doing more proactive efforts. And that's why I started the foundation. That's why I started supporting projects. And obviously that's what you can do through a company like Rivian is to actually have to actively change the world in the way that you think it needs to be. Because at a certain point, personal actions only go so far.
Yeah, and you've got locations now all over America. You've got this 2.6 million square foot facility where you're going to be manufacturing these vehicles. How do you scale your vision and do it not just with purpose and intention, but also humanely and maintaining that like sensibility about sustainability?
Yeah, it's so we've got. Just to touch on that point, we've got about 1,000 people at the company split between 3 primary development locations. In Detroit, we do a lot of the mechanical design and larger systems that have interactions with the big suppliers in the Midwest. And then on the West Coast, we have an office in Silicon Valley that does all of our connectivity, our cloud architecture, our self-driving. And then in Southern California and just outside of LA, we do all of our propulsion systems, our chassis systems. But the 3 of those work streams come together in our production facility, which is just south of Chicago. And we bought a plant from Mitsubishi, a large facility, 2.6 million square foot facility. And the sort of human story of this facility is remarkable. So this is a plant that was commissioned in 1990, which makes it really actually a relatively new used plant, if you will. But what in particular makes it interesting is the workforce that was there. A lot of the folks that are there, they launched the facility. So 1989, 1990, these are people that are 21, 22 years old. They launched this facility. 25, 30 years go by, and then they're part of the team that after running it and building it, now have to shut this facility down. So when we bought the facility, we not only just got the hardware, the acreages of land, we got a team of people that's passionate about restarting the facility. And it's really remarkable. I mean, I think we've got a gift to work with in terms of that level of energy and that passion to bring it back to life. So as we think about how do we take this gift that we've been given in terms of a workforce that's so motivated, and how do we challenge a lot of the conventions that have been built up in terms of industrial systems. So industrial systems, you have very often very much a class-based system. You have the white-collar workforce, the blue-collar workforce. There's a whole host of things that lead those two sides to often having friction. We see how unions have come in to sort of help try to make those two work a little bit better together. But a big part of what we're doing right now is actually mapping out and thinking about the psychology of our company and the psychology of this facility. And there's a few of the plant folks that are here. I don't know if they can hear me or are listening to this, but if they are, raise your hand. If Tyler and Mark's here, but I guess they're not. But, oh, sweet. So, hey, Tyler, put your hand up. So the guy who just waved, and Marco, who's not next to him, but another person from the plant, they're the embodiment, they're the personification of the passion and the energy that's going into relaunching our plant. And the table in front of me was actually built by Tyler. So this is the plant team, and normally, in a plant, it's clock in, clock out, I get out. This is a team that's coming in on the weekends and building like kick-ass tables for us to use at things like this or in the conference rooms at the plant. And so we're doing a lot of things in the facility to really take that energy and supercharge it, really harvest it. So it's just a simple example to give you guys a sense. We have 508 acres at the plant. Very small percent of which actually has the plant occupying it. Most of it's just grass. We're going to be turning a lot of that into an area to grow food. And we're going to run that in partnership with some of the local universities through their agriculture programs to grow food locally on our site, partnering with local universities, and then that food's going to be served in our facility with students that are learning from top chefs we're bringing in to run the food services in our facility. And we're going to provide incredible food to our plant team, regardless of what part of the plant you work in. So there's true equity. We treat every employee as part of this mission of bringing this facility back up. And that energy, that positive energy that we're building and establishing at the plant, we want it to be a benchmark for how industrial systems run. The collaboration, the communication between different groups, between our other facilities, and the focus on our purpose and the focus on getting it done really well is what is driving us. And ultimately, that's going to be what's building the cars that you guys have ordered. So it's so important that we have that right type of mentality. So there's 800 pre-order holders here tonight. I'm going to inundate Tyler and Mark, but if you get a chance, go grab them, ask them what it's like at the plant. There's a lot of stuff happening there. We're moving equipment, we're putting new equipment in. We've got amazingly talented people working day and night to bring that facility up and start delivering cars as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys caught that. They're growing their own food. You guys heard that, right?
So does that mean you guys are manufacturing tractors as well? At the plant, like plow your fields? Yeah.
I think it's time. We're gonna watch a clip from a longer video project that these guys have been collaborating on. Alex, do you want to kind of contextualize what we're about to see here?
Okay, so we're going to watch a short clip from a project that the Honnold Foundation is supporting in Puerto Rico with a community organization named Casa Pueblo, and Rivian has come on board, and basically it's a collaboration with the community organization, with Rivian, with the foundation, to bring Second Life batteries to help power a cooperative solar microgrid. So basically, think the town is of Atuntas in the center of Puerto Rico is maybe 17,000 people, so think like a small village, and 40 businesses around the city center coming together and forming the island's first cooperative microgrid. So we'll watch the little film and then we'll talk more about it, and I think we'll bring up some folks.
Yeah, we're going to bring up some people after.
Yeah. Cool.
We ready to cue the movie?
Let's do it, huh?
Cuando uno mira todas estas montañas, ve todos los ríos, eso le da a uno esperanza y le da deseos de vivir para poder defenderla.
Nosotros nos dimos cuenta que estaba el porvenir de Puerto Rico entredicho. Y decidimos entonces luchar, no solamente por las aguas, la ecología, el ambiente, sino también por la sobrevivencia de Puerto Rico como una nación.
There is a need to move away from fossil fuels, to reduce our ecological footprint, to do our part to confront global warming. We grew up here. We have been doing this for 39 years, and we're committed to continue walking that path.
I think that this project in Casa Pueblo is maybe the most complex project that we've taken on through the Honnold Foundation. Though it doesn't feel that big in some ways, just because our local partners, Arturo and Casa Pueblo, are so dialed and already have so many of the parts together.
What we're doing is a transformation, a transition from fossil fuels to clean energy sources that will be owned by the community. We're going to help the town to be energy self-sufficient.
It's kind of magical to find a place where everybody in the town already knows that solar is a good idea. Like, you don't need to sell it to anybody. They're psyched. They know how it works. They know how powerful it can be when it comes to disaster resilience and climate resilience. And they also know how powerful it can be economically because it's so much cheaper.
One of the big issues with renewable energy in general is energy storage. That's really where Rivian comes in, because Rivian manufactures electric vehicles, but really at the heart of that is energy storage, which is batteries. They're no longer great for a vehicle, but they can still provide backup for a community.
We've always known that this battery in the vehicle was always only the beginning. Today was an opportunity to see, did we hit the mark, right? Can we leverage our technology in our second application, third application, which is grid storage for communities?
In a perfect world, what we're going to end up with is the island's first cooperative solar microgrid. Something that is totally based on the community's needs and interests to really build something that's going to set an example for the rest of the island.
We're gonna take the streets of Adjuntas, not to oppose to the mining, not to oppose to a natural gas pipeline. This is La Marcha del Sí, the march of a yes. In the case of Puerto Rico, there's a lot of injustice, and we have to confront that reality. This is for the people to get together and tell us collectively that we want a different future, and we're going to build that different future. The majority is claiming a change and a transformation now, not in 2050. That we want the transformation to clean energy sources now.
So we're going to welcome a few of these folks to the stage. Arturo Massoldea, come on up here. He is the director of Casa Pueblo. We have Dory Trimble, the executive director of the Honnold Foundation. And then we have Ben Moon, who's the beautiful filmmaker behind this piece that you just watched. Beautiful. So Arturo, tell us a little bit more about Casa Pueblo. Like, we saw a little bit here, but explain to us what's going on here.
Well, I want to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here in Denver. I come from Adjuntas, a community in the center part of the island, and we have been organized for 39 years, initially to prevent open strip mining in the area, but protesting was not enough. We needed to engage into dealing with the reality of adjuntas and seek sustainable development. So that's where we ended up promoting new forest. We have been managing 2 state forests for 23 years. We have a school being built inside a forest. It runs on solar power. We have a radio station. Now we have a solar cinema for the well-being of the people of adjuntas. And after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, since we were running with solar power for 20 years, we were an energy oasis for the community. And we have been helping the community ever since, and joining and this experience with the Honnold Foundation, with Dottie Trimble, Larry Parker that went to Adjuntas, and Alex, and now with RJ, it had been a blast to promote an additional change. We aim to transform the energy landscape of Adjuntas and Puerto Rico.
Yeah, let's have a round of applause for that. Help us understand the impact of Maria on Puerto Rico and the immediate aftermath, and what the process has been towards rebuilding.
So we are suffering the consequences of global warming. I have to tell you that the new hurricane season started in June 1st, and even 2 weeks before, Storm Andrea was recorded in the Caribbean. So we're going to be facing hurricanes, stronger hurricanes in the future. But with Hurricane Maria almost 2 years ago, all the island was devastated. The infrastructure, the energy and communication and water infrastructure collapsed. So the medical services to the people. And that's where changing and transforming the energy reality of the island is not an opportunity, but more of a necessity. We have to change the way we're addressing the energy the component. Right now, it's centralized energy generation with fossil fuels that we don't have, that we don't produce, that generates climate change, that is sensitive to hurricane wind force because of the transmission and distribution lines. And with solar power, with energy storage capacity, now we can produce the energy where it is needed. And after the hurricane, we have done, it's not only Casa Pueblo the only energy oasis. 2 years after, there's like 60 Casa Pueblos. 60 homes are now operating like Casa Pueblo with energy independence. 5 grocery stores, the barber shop, the hardware store, the restaurant, the pizza place, even the fire station, the elderly home, the emergency unit are running on solar power with independent setups. Now we're going to do a really capstone. What we're going to do is make Adjuntas Pueblo Solar. And to finish, if you think about what is going on in Puerto Rico 2 years after the hurricane, and you see what the government is doing, is basically rewiring. We have the same thing that before Hurricane Maria. Nothing have changed. We are in the same position, but not in Adjuntas. Not in Adjuntas, but because what we are doing is not only to help people, but to help people to change our reality, to be better prepared for the future, and to be more ecologically responsible with the planet.
So, yeah. The biggest obstacles that you face, I'm gathering they're governmental, they're regulatory, or are they more education or funding oriented? Like, what are the big challenges that you're currently facing right now that you're grappling with?
Well, let's say that in Puerto Rico, there's a politically complicated situation. And with the energy setup that we have, the government, it's sort of stating goals that they are not intended to comply. They want to keep the same energy setup. And this is contrary to what the majority of the people of Puerto Rico and different sectors are claiming. We want a transformation now. The technology is out there. We should embrace clean energy sources right now. And we find in the local government the greatest opposition because they are like probably in the US, that economical and political relationship keeps the government for actually promoting transformation. And that's why this bottom-up process, which is completely independent from government funding, is everything private, is a Honnold Foundation, is Casa Pueblo driving a process of transformation. And I don't want to talk about the difficulties. What I'm here to celebrate that we're doing the transformation and that we're going to prevail.
Dory, how did Arturo's work first come across your radar? How did you guys first get in contact?
So it's actually a very boring story. I was reading about Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. I think that anybody who cares about the impacts of climate change on our world, or anybody who just cares about people, probably heard about what happened in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And Arturo's name comes up a lot. Casa Pueblo is a really well-known community organization. They've been doing incredible environmental organizing for decades. And they provided a lot of really valuable services to the community in Adjuntas after Maria. And so I found Arturo's name and I sent him an email. And now we're here, so.
And what was the process of getting involved and how did that work?
Yeah, so the Honnold Foundation is very relationship-based, which I think is like a reflection of how Alex likes to work and how I like to work. We like to know the people we're supporting. We provide all our grantees with unrestricted funding, which means that we write them a check and they spend it how they want to. So it's really important that we know and trust and understand the nonprofits that we collaborate with. And so the relationship with Casa Pueblo got started. We had a couple phone calls. We chatted about their work. It became really clear that Casa Pueblo's work and the Honnold Foundation's work promoting solar energy access, that there was a ton of overlap. And so we went to Adjuntas. I actually went there with Larry Parker of Rivian. We had a exciting adventure together. We'd never met, and we showed up in San Juan, and we were like, okay, I guess we're going to go check this out together. And got to spend a really awesome couple of days with Arturo, getting to know the community in Adjuntas, developing a better sense of the challenges that they had faced after Maria and that they face in general, especially in terms of energy access. And we kind of took it from there.
And RJ, how did this work within the Rivian plan? Like, where does what Arturo is doing intersect with what you're doing at Rivian?
So I talked about it a little bit before, but foundational to the design of our battery system and our vehicle system is making sure that the batteries themselves can live on beyond the vehicle in these second life applications. And we're thinking, we look at out over time, this is a very big opportunity. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of vehicles, thousands and thousands of megawatt hours of energy storage that needs to be applied. And this is a beautiful project in that it allows us to demonstrate what we're thinking about for a community that really needs it, and in partnership with that community to really fully build out the potential of energy storage combined with solar. And in many ways, this will serve to create echoes for others to see this. And as Arturo said, the goal isn't just what we're talking about here in terms of this community. We want it to be echoed across Puerto Rico and even beyond, of course, into United States, into other countries. And there's lots of opportunities to create these energy ecosystems where you can move away from fossil fuels and towards more sustainable solutions.
Dory, when you're in your capacity as executive director of Honnold Foundation, what is the process of identifying a project like, okay, this is for us, like this is the one we want to get involved in? What does that look like?
Well, we have a couple criteria that we use when we're trying to figure out whether or not a project is something that we want to support. And the sort of central tenets, whenever we're thinking about whether or not something is Honnold Foundation work, the key questions are, does it reduce environmental impact, and does it improve human lives? And then we start drilling that down. So we care a lot about social equity and environmental equity, thinking about whether or not it helps give people more access. And I think a really key question that's sometimes overlooked is we ask whether solar is the right solution to the problem. Solar is really, it's easy to slap a solar panel on something, right? And I think that sometimes solar becomes sort of shorthand for like, we care about the environment. But at the Honnold Foundation, we really want to make sure that solar is the right solution. And with Casa Pueblo, the work we're doing there, solar is the right solution for Puerto Rico. It doesn't take a genius to understand that. And so when we're reaching out to new partners or when organizations approach us, we're kind of running them through those criteria. We also love working with organizations that are led by people who are from the community they serve. So Casa Pueblo checks that box in spades. We care a lot about community relationships and accountability, making sure that those organizations understand where they're working, understand their people. And we also care a lot about storytelling. I think that sort of the like secret sauce with the Honnold Foundation, we're not a huge organization. We support a lot of cool work, but like we're not the Gates Foundation. The cool thing that we can do is like shine this light on projects that wouldn't have visibility otherwise. We have this like storytelling magic with the help of people like Ben and people like Rivian kind of drawing more attention to this work. Like RJ was saying, like this isn't just about the microgrid and adjuntas, it's about setting a precedent for the island, and the story is a huge part of scaling that work up.
Speaking of story, Ben, beautiful work. Let's hear it again for just the experience of watching that film.
Thanks.
What was it like for you trying to chronicle this experience and capture the spirit and the essence and storytell around it?
Well, the beautiful thing about this was it was the first time a lot of us had been there. So everybody was seeing it with fresh eyes. And, I had never been to Puerto Rico before. And so meeting Arturo and seeing what he had done in his community, it became obvious that this partnership was just an extension of everything that Rivian wanted to do as in this instance with the Second Life batteries and the Honnold Foundation. I mean, I've known Alex for, I don't know, a long time, 10 years probably. We worked together a long time ago before all the Oscar stuff. And just being able to, see his passion for helping other people that might not have access to the same things that everybody else does. And then seeing RJ's passion, and even just today with what, he told me at lunch over about the factory producing its own food and for the employees, like that's just a visionary thing that I think is, we need more people like that in this our world, especially today where everybody's us versus them. And so going to Puerto Rico, seeing the potential for what could be done with this project, it was easy to capture. We just basically were there for a few days and showed what we could, but it's part of a bigger story that is just, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I can't wait to dive deeper with everybody.
Dory, what do you envision for the future of Honnold Foundation? Like, where is this going in your mind?
That's a great question. That's something Alex and I talk about a lot. I think that it's evolving. One of the really awesome things about working with the Honnold Foundation and working with Alex is that we have a really clear sense of what it is that we want to do. Like the core of our work is supporting solar energy access, and everything else is just in service of that. And so I'm confident that that path is going to stay true. Like I don't see a lot of change there. But we are in this space where suddenly we have an opportunity to really expand our work, to start funding more organizations, to start thinking critically about where in the world there's the greatest need, what communities like close to home and far away are places where we can help rebalance the scales a little bit. We talk a lot about fairness. Alex always talks about fairness. We talk about our work. And thinking about places where like things haven't been super fair, or communities where like they really just haven't gotten the same chance that everybody else has. I'm really excited about expanding our grant-making work and our storytelling work to support more communities who have been getting the short end of the stick. And that's always been a part of our work, but we're growing it.
I just want to say a quick thing to put this project in context for everybody here, since all you guys have actually pre-ordered Rivians. But so just to be clear, so this particular project, it looks like it'll probably take something like 8 car batteries to power this cooperative microgrid. And so if you think that there's something like 400 pre-ordered cars here, that basically could power 50 different communities around Puerto Rico or something. I mean, I'm just throwing out numbers, but that's like a rough sense of the potential scale of a project like this. And when you think that you guys represent a tiny fraction of the total number of potential Rivian owners, and you'll potentially be making tons and tons of cars, I mean, that's why a project like this is so important to us, because it really does show real potential. I mean, if you can have such a big impact on a community with just 8 car batteries, I mean, it's tremendous opportunity. And so we're actually in the process of, the Honnold Foundation is in the process of hiring a project manager to sort of oversee this project, but then also because it has such potential to scale, I mean, conceivably within a few years, there could be 10, 15, hundreds of projects like this around Puerto Rico, around the Caribbean. I mean, electric cars are the future, and there will only be more and more batteries. And so there's this tremendous possibility here, and this is really just the beginning of that.
Yeah, as Alex said, this is a really key point. This is why these types of efforts are so important, because we see the ability to have enormous impact over time with the batteries from all of your vehicles at their end of lives. And along with all the other things we're working on in some of the applications of our skateboard, creating a real ecosystem for our batteries to exist beyond the vehicle is really important to us, because we see how powerful it can be. We have very big batteries in our cars, so one battery can do a lot in terms of its impact to a community.
So paint me the picture. There's millions of these batteries available. In your mind, in your dream, how are these being repurposed most effectively to change the whole way that we think and apply energy?
Well, it's, Dory said something that was important. We want to first identify the best places to apply the batteries first. So what we're doing in Puerto Rico is exciting. It has beautiful community buy-in. It's a great way to demonstrate that. There's applications well beyond that. So data centers, other communities in other countries that as we said, don't have fair access to power or fair access to energy. But there's some very large deployments, and we haven't announced yet, but we have a number of other relationships and partnerships that we're establishing to really put this idea, this ability to use energy storage from our vehicles through a megaphone to really help drive adoption of more sustainable ways to access energy.
It's super inspiring. I think we're at a moment right now where there's organizations like the Honnold Foundation, organizations like Rivian, that really get us as consumers excited and rethinking how we think about giving and philanthropy and nonprofits, rather than sort of making it like an obligation. Is something that we can feel really good about and proud of and connected to, right? Through the work, through the storytelling, and hearing Arturo talk about the impact that it's having.
I mean, I'm just stealing the mic for a minute, but if you're talking about personal impact and personal giving, things like that. So, I mean, something that Arturo actually said when you were talking about money and politics in Puerto Rico, and I'm sort of running off script here, but let's just go with it. But when you're talking about the unfortunate connection between money and politics and transition to clean energy and all that, I mean, I was thinking about that because domestically, one of the things I love about electric cars and why I have solar in my home is that I personally don't support wars in the Middle East, let's say, but I'm like, I can charge my car at home. I can just completely opt out of the entire oil industry. I mean, obviously it's embedded in my groceries, and it's embedded in other aspects of my life, but to a certain point as a consumer, I can just opt out of certain things that I don't support. My local utility is pretty regressive. I don't really support it. Thankfully, I produce my own energy. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of electric cars and transition to renewables, is that it allows individuals to opt out of a lot of the things that they personally probably would not support. I mean, say foreign wars and other things. So you're like, I personally don't support mountaintop removal mining. I'm like, well, thankfully I don't buy power from my utility anymore. So, that's a small step in the right direction. Anyway, that end rant, but since you guys have all pre-ordered Rivians, I'm like, you put solar in the house, you run the truck. It's like, at least you can opt out a lot of the things that I'm hoping that you don't personally support. But, we'll see.
This is why they pay me the big bucks. I'm coming in. So, yeah, I think that, and I totally agree with that. And I think that the proactive sort of like other side of the coin there is like, yes, opting out I think is really important. But I think that when we think about giving and like impact on the world, there's also an opt-in. And for me, the opt-in is supporting work that has a positive impact. And obviously, like, I run the Honnold Foundation. Fundraising is a part of my job, but I don't really care if you give us money. I just think that people should be giving their money to things that they care about. And that's something that I think Alex has always really stood for. The foundation started back when he was like full-fledged homeless, and he was giving 1/3 of his income to our work. And if any of you think for a second about what it would be like to take 1/3 of your income and just give it away to things that you're passionate about, I think that it's a really compelling model. And it doesn't have to be 1/3. You can give like $20. That's also acceptable. But thinking about what it is that you want to see in the world and like what you care about and what you want to support, giving money to those causes has a real and measurable impact. And I think it like builds community. It makes you feel connected to the world around you. Like there's a lot of good in that. And that sort of, I think that proactive side can coexist with the opt-out too.
We're coming to the close of our 1-hour window here, so I want to have RJ, I'd like you to kind of take us out here with what's next for Rivian, what the consumers can look forward to. You're gonna spill all your secrets here.
Yeah, no, yeah. Let me tell you all the other things we're doing. I think first, just thank you everyone for coming out. It's as we said at the beginning, it's amazing to see so many excited folks that came out to meet with us, the team, Alex, hear about what we're doing, but also see the vehicles. Talk to Rivian folks tonight. Make sure you get a chance to ask them what they're working on, poke them. They can probably tell you things off the record that I'm not going to say here. But there are a lot of exciting things coming. So, of course, the products we see here, we've talked a lot about. There's other products we're developing. There's other things we're doing with some of our technology. We're excited to start to show the world more of that. But I also want everybody to know here very, very pragmatically, we're working very hard and very long to make sure that we get your cars ready. I think that's the most common question I'm getting today. So can I drive one of those home? And I wish I could give you the keys to one of those, but sorry. But all jokes aside, you know, we're on track. Lots of activity at the plant with our teams, with the supply chain. Things are gearing up really nicely. As you've seen in terms of how we approach these complex systems, we're being very thoughtful and organized about how we execute. And as we get closer to production, we're going to start asking you to tell us exactly what you want in terms of configuring your vehicle. So later this year, you'll get a note to ask you to configure color and feature set. But again, thank you for being part of this. Thank you for being on the journey with us. Thanks for your support. You know, we're honored and excited to have you guys here. Thanks again.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to everybody who's been watching on the live stream, and I think we're just gonna mingle and hang out for a little while here, right? Yeah. All right. Thank you.